Hi, ocean lovers. Welcome to episode number 10 of Dive Stories, brought to you by PADI, helping millions around the world to seek adventure and save the ocean. I'm your host, Ocean Allison, and on today's episode, I'm chatting with Adam Sellars. Adam is an Australian freediver and founder of the Pressure Project. During this episode, Adam shares what it's like exploring the underwater world on a single breath, some epic dive stories from around Australia, and all about how the fundamentals of freediving can help us deal with pressures above and below the surface. All that and more coming right up. Thanks for being here. Ready to jumpstart your next underwater adventure? Good news! We're offering Dive Stories podcast listeners an exclusive 20% off all PADI recreational e-learning courses. With PADI e-learning, you can start your next dive adventure right now from the comfort of your own home before connecting at any time with a PADI dive center or resort to complete your in-water training. Head to PADI.com/courses to select which dive course is right for you and use code PODCAST, that's PODCAST, to take advantage of this exclusive 20% off discount. This offer is valid through May 15th, 2021. You're listening to Dive Stories. We bring the underwater world to you through in-depth conversations with inspiring divers from around the globe. Thanks for diving in with us as we seek adventure and save the ocean. Happy listening and happy diving. Today's Dive Stories guest is Australian freediver and founder of the Pressure Project, Adam Sellars. Adam, welcome to Dive Stories, and thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're going to jump right in. We're going to start this podcast out by diving into what we call the Dive 5. How the Dive 5 works is at the start of each episode, I ask our guest 5 rapid fire questions about their experience as a diver and an ocean lover. So, Adam, are you ready to answer the Dive 5?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Number 1, what is the deepest depth you've been to on a single breath?
74 meters.
Okay, number 2, in just one word, how does freediving make you feel?
Connected.
Okay, number 3, what is your favorite ocean animal?
Tiger shark.
Nice one. Okay, number 4, what is your dream dive destination that you haven't gotten to yet?
Dahab.
Okay, and then last one, number 5, in one word, what does the ocean mean to you?
Connection to self. Oh, that's 3.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll accept it. We'll accept it. Okay. Well, thank you for answering the Dive 5, Adam. That was great. We're going to get a little more in-depth now by jumping into the core of the interview. And I want to start out by chatting with you about this activity that we call freediving. Now, just to give listeners a bit of context here, Adam, you are a PADI freediver instructor trainer. You represented Australia in the 2017 Freediving World Championships. And, like you just mentioned in the Dive 5, you have this incredible ability to dive to depths over 70 meters or 230 feet, for those of us that are less familiar with meters. And you can do that with a breath hold of about 5.5 minutes. So you're clearly a very accomplished freediver, and just to lay all that out there to start. And we're definitely going to get into the mental aspects of freediving in a bit, since that's a big focus for you. But to start out, I'd love if you could just describe what it feels like physically to dive to such incredible depths of the ocean on a single breath.
Yeah, great question. We are mainly made up of fluid. So it's only really our air spaces that get compressed. And a lot of these areas don't have like nerve endings. So, a lot of people think like, oh my God, you're going down and you're being crushed and all that sort of stuff. And like, yes, in some ways you are. Um, but it's the ability to kind of be able to stay present and control your emotional state and all of those sort of things before you dive that help you on the dive. Because what we're starting to, realize is that the body has its own wisdom. And so what I often say to my students is like, the body knows how to do this dive. You only just have to work on the mind part. And so when you have the ability to control your emotional state, control your thoughts, all that sort of stuff, and really enjoy the dive, the body can do it. And so once you get past what's called residual volume, right? So like your lungs are compressed to the point they won't compress anymore. From that point, you just sink, you free fall. So you just drop. So that's the part where you really have to go into yourself and really just let go. And you just fall. It's like flying, but just going the other way. And the only thing you really need to do is equalize. So really the distraction of like just making sure that you equalize your ears, and you hold air in your mouth and all those types of things with the advanced part of the equalization. It's really such a beautiful feeling. You just can completely let go, surrender to the ocean. And, for mine, like I have an alarm on my watch only about 5 meters from the bottom plate. So for a good portion of that dive, say somewhere between 30 and 65 meters, I'm basically in a state of like being asleep, which is such a really nice feeling. And then all of a sudden your alarm, it's almost like an alarm in the morning. It's like, dee-doo. It's like, oh, okay, it's time to wake up because the bottom plate's coming. Um, and then, it's a really good feeling when you get to that bottom plate. And then from that point, you got to kick that, that negative buoyancy up. So you're like a rock. So all of a sudden it's like, all right, for me, I'm like, it's party time. Let's get back to the surface. Let's focus on our technique. Let's kick this really heavy body up. But yeah, there's moments in that free fall where you are completely detached from the outside world. And, for some people that creates a bit of anxiety and fear because you're like, wow, you're down there on your own. But, what most freedivers will tell you is that is their escape. That is their complete and utter escape from the outside world.
And so going along with the physicality of freediving, relying on holding your breath to dive to different depths in the ocean, I'm curious for you, in what way does freediving make you feel connected to ocean animals, and especially those that are relying on holding their breath too, like, maybe whales or dolphins?
Getting back to the body knows how to do these dives, whether it's 10 meters or 50 meters. We have something called the mammalian dive reflex. So our human body reacts, in a very similar, if not kind of like the same way as mammals that are in the ocean. We breathe air at the surface and then we dive, which is what dolphins, whales, orcas, seals, all these mammals in the ocean. So our bodies are built for this, and when you are able to get past that mental aspect, we are basically walking dolphins, Allison. So when I absolutely love scuba. There's no issue there. There's not like a us versus them type of thing. But when you are quiet in the water, in the ocean, and you are not blowing bubbles, a lot of the times, especially the big mammals as well, they kind of seem to be really curious as to what you are because they look at you as like, yeah, well, you kind of look like you belong here. We don't see you guys much, but, you're quite fluid through the water. You're not noisy. There's no bubbles going on. And so they're quite accepting because we're also like, we're kind of slow, right? So it's a great connection to wildlife being on one breath. Absolutely.
Now, shifting gears here a bit, in 2017, you founded the Pressure Project, which teaches the principles of freediving as an instrument to help people deal with the pressures of life. And this was largely inspired by your own mental health journey. So, can you share a bit about how freediving has helped you personally in terms of mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So I count myself extremely lucky for finding it at the time that I did. Because I think, a lot of people will be touched by some kind of mental illness at some point in their life, some less severe than others. But for me, I just didn't understand it. And it seemed like no one around me, doctors or anyone, seemed to really have a full grasp on what it was and how to deal with it. And so, I was just extremely lucky that I found that all the principles and the teachings and the methodologies behind freediving, which a lot of them come also from the yoga and meditation world as well. Once I understood what it took to deal with the actual real pressures, right? So like when you're diving down deep into the ocean on one breath, there's like real pressure there. It's real. Like you can't just say like, oh, it's not there, because it is. The ocean is compressing your air spaces as you go down. Not only that, you're on one breath. So in terms of hierarchy of human needs, oxygen's number one, so all of a sudden you take that away. So yes, you're kind of being crushed. And now you're depriving yourself of the number one thing humans need to survive. And so for me, I actually loved that feeling. I loved being deep in the ocean. I loved all of that. But then I was kind of looking at land going, what are the pressures on land that are really getting me down? And are they actually real? Like that stuff in the ocean, that's real. But this stuff on land that I'm just letting, build up, stack one on top of each other, is that real, or is it only real if I accept it as being real? And then so in scenarios where like historically it had really got me down, whether it be, a person or an event or whatever, I just started kind of going, what do I do before a really deep dive? And I was like, well, I connect with breath and I relax my body. I work on that body-mind connection, which is a very yogic type of thing. They work really hard on building the connection between the body and the mind. And so, like at a competition level, and I've done two comps now, if you go to that competition zone and you're stressed, you may as well tell everyone, judges, safety team, fans that are there to see it. Sorry, guys, thanks for coming, but I'm stressed out, so I'm going home. Do you know what I mean? There's no room for stress before a deep dive. In fact, you have to be the exact opposite of stress and arousal. You've got to be like a buffalo soldier sitting on the surface, just like cruising with some Rasta music. Um, so I started to also like with my students, and what I teach is like, wouldn't it be great if you had that same thought process for land? When you're walking around and you're in your workplace or whatever, you just go, hey, there's just no room for stress in my life. I just don't do stress. Thank you very much. Because it's so harmful to the human body, stress. It's the number one killer of humans. So, I count myself extremely lucky because now what I know is that I can regulate my nervous system. I can regulate my thought patterns, all through the principles of freediving.
Really amazing. Thank you for sharing about, your own personal journey with mental health a bit and how freediving principles have helped you with that. But beyond yourself, through the Pressure Project, obviously the goal is to help others with their mental health challenges or just obstacles in their life. So, without going into super specifics, what are some examples that you've seen where someone's feeling pressure above the surface and that has been alleviated by feeling the physical pressure of water at depth, like you mentioned, or just by, practicing freediving principles and techniques?
Yeah, so there was a retreat that I ran down in the sinkholes in South Australia down here, and I had this guy who extremely good businessman, had an amazing business, but had got to the point where he was just overworked and stressed out. And, on the surface, when you spoke to him, you're like, oh, he seems, pretty calm, cool, and collected, and obviously very good at what he does, etc. And so we walked down into this like limestone little sinkhole, and it's crystal clear and it's perfect on the surface. And sometimes you get a little bit like you just look through your own lens and you think like, oh, this is really easy diving. And this particular guy sat on the side of this little platform and just all of a sudden just burst out into tears. And this is a grown man, quite a, big fella and tough guy. And it was just his overwhelming sense of anxiety about what was about to come. So his nervous system just wreaked havoc on him. And, I went, oh, my God, I was already in the water. So I kicked back over and I was like, oh, mate, what's going on for you? He goes, I don't know. I'm just so anxious. I'm so stressed. And it's just giving me this, I can't stop crying. And I said, oh, and we'd just done a breath workshop beforehand. And I said, look, jump in. Don't worry about diving down. We're just going to snorkel around on the surface and look at this amazing, pristine environment. And then we did that for a while. And then we came back and I said, hey, just remember that connection with your breath before you go. And then you go down. And so by the end of like the second day, he dove to 10 meters where he didn't even want to get in the water. And it was that regulating his nervous system. And that's the biggest thing, is that you can control what's going on. And for so long, we didn't know this. We didn't know that we had control over this nervous system of ours. We just thought, well, it's a part of the autonomic nervous system. So we don't really have control over that. It's kind of like a two-way feedback loop. So if you're able to relax this body down, it will send messages to your brain to say, hey, we're all good down here. And then conversely, your brain can do the same thing for your body. So your brain goes like, hey, we're all sweet up here. We're feeling it. And then it'll send messages to the body and the body will relax. So this is the biggest thing that I see, that helps people, is they get more connection between the brain and the body, and they work together as a little team. And people can achieve amazing things and get through panic attacks or stress or anxiety or whatever it might be that's happening in their life, especially if they practice it. If you practice it, just like building a muscle, it gets stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really important to note that embedded in all this incredible work you do through the Pressure Project, on the surface it can seem like you're teaching freediving, and you really focus on infusing elements of mindfulness and meditation. And many people around the world right now are maybe experiencing added mental stress due to the ongoing pandemic, or, just due to something specific to them. There's no doubt that we all have internal challenges that we face daily, like you said. So I'd love if you could share with myself and listeners just some simple practices or exercises that you recommend that, maybe they can be done above or below the surface, that you've found to be really powerful in helping someone improve their mental state or mental clarity, maybe overall, like building up that muscle, like you mentioned, or just even in a moment.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the world just needs to free dive. That's it. um,
You heard it here.
Yep, you can take that to the bank. So, look, there is parts of there's truth to that statement. It doesn't have to be free diving, but what I find free diving is like, it connects you to community. So it connects you to the community of freediving. It connects you to the ocean, which just brings you present. But then the unique thing with freediving is it really does bring you to self. When you're diving down on one breath, you can't be anything but like present. It just brings you present straight away. But look, some techniques I always say to people, like, if you, like, sometimes in the meditation world, they get a little bit like they have these rules, right? And like, oh, you have to do it before breakfast. You have to do it, in the same place every time, and you have to do it for at least 20 minutes. And like, so there's like a few rules, and like, that's okay if you're a Buddhist monk and you're sitting in a cave for 10 years. It's quite easy to do that. But in our 21st century world that we live in, it does get busy. You've got things you need to do, all that sort of stuff. So I always say, like, start really small. Like, I'm talking like 3 to 5 minutes, and you can build from there. I mean, a meditation course would be amazing, but at the moment we probably don't have access to that, depending on where you live in the world. So look, I say 3 to 5 minutes of what's called targeted breath. So it's very simple. In the beginning, you can even do it laying down if you need to. You want to move away from that and be in a like good posture sitting up eventually. But so there's some really simple things you need to do. Firstly, obviously, it's close your eyes. So closing down your eyes tells your brain that whatever space you're in right now, you are safe. So that's significant. Breathing through the nose. So breathing through the nose, it's our filtration system. It's much better quality air. So breathing through the nose, belly breathing, or diaphragmatic breath as it's called, and then lengthening the exhale, right? So closing the eyes, breathing through the nose, belly breathing, and lengthening out your exhale. All of those things in conjunction with each other stimulate what's called the vagus nerve in the human body, the longest nerve we have, and it's responsible for putting us into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is where we want to be. That's our rest, digest, and regenerate system, which is where you also want to be for freediving before you go. That's why we connect with breath. So 3 to 5 minutes of doing that, and if it helps as well, if your mind wanders a little bit, count your breath in. So you can count into, say, 3 or 4 seconds with the belly breath, and then try and increase the exhale a bit. So you might try and double it. So you might go 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out, count that, or 4 seconds, 8 seconds out, which is just a way of kind of detaching from the outside world because you're just focusing on your breath and how long in and how long out. So breath, whilst you think, oh, it's super simple, it's also super powerful. So I think the biggest takeaway for people listening is, that it is start small, start with breath, and you can build on that. Or do a freediving course.
Okay, ocean lovers, it's time for the dive log, the part of the show where we feature an epic dive story from one of our amazing listeners. This episode's listener dive story comes from Marissa Gomez about an unforgettable dive she had off the Azores. Let's dive in.
In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 37 degrees north, 24 degrees west, the most blue I ever saw, there was our diving spot. The plan was trying to see the famous family of groupers. And the moment I entered the water, there they were, swimming directly to me. And I looked down and I saw this big grouper looking at me, swimming so slowly into my direction. That moment, when we look into each other's eyes, two souls, the same curiosity. That moment is always gonna remember me. Respect and protect the life we have on Earth. This is our mission.
Thank you so much, Marissa, for sharing that incredible underwater experience with us. I would say that an up-close encounter with a large grouper in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean definitely makes for an unforgettable dive. Listeners, if you have an epic dive story to share too, head to PADI.com/podcast to record and submit one of your most memorable dive stories for a chance to be featured in an upcoming episode. We love hearing from our global community of PADI divers, so head to PADI.com/podcast today. And now, back to this episode. Now, Adam, over the years with the Pressure Project, you've also had the opportunity to teach freediving to some of Australia's top athletes, including swimmers, rugby players, cricket players, rowers, and surfers. in addition to sharing freediving principles through public speaking with major corporate entities like Kawasaki and Insurance Australia Group, just to name a couple. So I'm curious, what does it mean to you personally to see that your teachings are so helpful and valued across all these different sectors, this wide variety of people and groups?
Yeah, look, it's amazing, and like I said at the start of this is like I count myself extremely lucky, and we all have stresses. Like, you know, an Olympic athlete will have the pressure. Getting back to the pressure project, they will have the pressure and the expectations sometimes of the whole nation. You know, they're going away to the Olympics, and the Australian swim team, for example, we've always been one of the best nations in the world. And that comes with extreme amounts of pressure. And so athletes, for example, will be like, they won't be able to sleep because they can't switch off from that pressure and anxiety of, Tokyo's coming, and, God, what if I don't win? Or what if I, false start? Or what if I this? So the brain starts to play tricks on them. It's the same with someone working a 9-to-5 job. They've got pressure from the boss and, all these sorts of things like, oh, will I keep my job? What if I don't do this? I don't feel like I'm doing as well as Sally over there. Our brains are just so reactive and so scared and fearful. Like, so it affects every human, no matter where or what you do. And so, that's why no matter what setting I go into, whether it's dealing with, the Western Australian cricket team here, or whether I'm doing a presentation to an insurance company, every human feels the same stresses and pressures of life. And it's that old adage, it's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that you are able to help so many people by facilitating the work that you do, and, in all these different settings. And with all of that, whether you're teaching a PADI freediving course, or you're hosting a pressure project retreat, like you've mentioned, or you're simply freediving with your kids for fun, which I know you love to do.
Yeah.
What are some of your all-time favorite freediving spots, specifically in Australia?
Oh, I've got like two. So one is an island called Lady Elliot Island, which sits at the southernmost tip of the Great Barrier Reef. And, once we get out there, there's no reception. So you throw your phones away and you can just jump off the shore and you can see humpback whales, tiger sharks, manta rays everywhere. It's just alive. It's been protected for 50 years. So when humans don't have a big footprint on somewhere, the life just flourishes. So that's an amazing place. And then, conversely, something so different is like cold water in sinkholes in South Australia. So, where it's fresh water, they're just like these naturally volcanically formed, deep sinkholes that, you can, there's no waves, there's no current. It's just a really deep swimming pool with, so that's so different. So they're the two kind of spots that really hold a special place.
Okay. So we've talked quite a bit about how freediving training, can allow for self-discovery, but fundamentally it allows for discovery and exploration of the underwater world, like the dive sites that you just described. So with the name of this podcast being Dive Stories, I've got to ask, what is one of your most memorable freediving stories?
Yeah, I would say, so last year there's like 20 of us freedivers on this Lady Elliot Island, and we're just focusing on, going within and going down the line, and people are doing their courses. And then next minute, from about 100 meters away, you can see this bow wave coming towards us. And I'm like, trying to watch my people and instruct. And then I'm like, oh my God, that is like 3 humpbacks moving towards us. And I just said to everyone, like, just like, stop, everyone stop diving. Have a look at this. And it was like a scene out of a movie where like, they just looked like 3 submarines coming towards us. And they just came in and dove down looking at us. They came in to check us out. And, that's just the uniquely amazing thing about the ocean is it is still so wild. We can't control it. Land we kind of own. But when you dip into the ocean, it's just like we go down the pecking order. We can't control it. And things like that happen. And it's like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now because, we just had like 20 people just like, and when the whales then took off, just, like hugging each other, crying, just like, for some people, they were just like, that's it, I'm done. That's my bucket list. Like, you can take me now, kind of thing. Like, I'm happy to check out because I've seen something like that. And, that's a good, like, when people say to me like, oh my God, like the ocean's a bit scary. I'm like, no, you have no idea. And once you get into that ocean environment, there's almost that kind of like almost, and I know it probably sounds terrible, but like almost feeling sorry for land dwellers, like, you don't get to see this kind of stuff. Like you got to get in, you just got to get in this ocean, whether it's in 5 meters of water and seeing a little stingray on the bottom of the sand, or whether it's in 100 meters of water and seeing some whales. Like it is just like nothing else.
Yeah, agreed. So to wrap up, Adam, one last thing. What advice or words of wisdom do you have for anybody in the world that's thinking about becoming a PADI certified freediver?
Yeah, look, just just get in, because it's, I think it really covers the kind of the few things that I think humans at their essence need. It is that connection with people and community. It's connection with exploration, and then it's that connection back with ourself. And that's why I'm so passionate about freediving, and that's why, when people come to the courses, that's, I think, why they get addicted, because they feel a part of a community. They then connect with ocean and they connect with themselves.
Well, Adam, on behalf of our global community of PADI divers and ocean lovers, thank you for exploring the depths of the ocean through freediving, for sharing with the world how freediving can help to deal with pressures above and below the surface. And thank you for joining us on Dive Stories. It's been really great chatting with you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Dive Stories. You've just heard Adam Sellars, Australian freediver and founder of the Pressure Project. To learn more, you can follow the Pressure Project on social media at Pressure Project and visit www.thepressureproject.com.au. Inspired to connect with the ocean further? Good news! We're offering Dive Stories podcast listeners an exclusive 20% off all PADI recreational e-learning courses. With PADI e-learning, you can start your next dive adventure right now from the comfort of your own home. E-learning allows you to complete the online portion first and then connect at any time with a PADI dive center or resort to complete your in-water training. Whether you're just starting or continuing your diving journey, PADI e-learning is an ideal way to jumpstart your next underwater adventure. So head to PADI.com/courses to select which course is right for you and use code PODCAST, that's PODCAST, to take advantage of this exclusive 20% off discount. This offer is valid through May 15th, 2021. This has been Dive Stories, brought to you by PADI. Seek adventure, save the ocean. If you love the ocean and enjoyed this podcast episode, please subscribe to Dive Stories in your podcast app and feel free to leave a review. Follow PADI on social media and head to PADI.com to join our community of torchbearers working together to seek adventure and save the ocean. I'm your host, Ocean Allison. Happy diving!